And here we go again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be. This is Coffee Talk Live from middle of nowhere, Georgia. Double secret location on double secret probation. Surrounded by my mirthful mischief makers here, tearing up all around me on the floor because they're not tired at all. And that's what kittens do. That's right. Go ahead and do whatever you're going to do there. Again, this is Coffee Talk Live. So at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube or Prepper University on YouTube or fistfulofradio.com, fistfulofradio.com out of Atlanta, where you can find me Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. And so we will get ready here to dive into the news in a little bit. Take a look at some of the people who are joining us on the live stream. And of course, again, if you're listening and not watching, I try to read as many of the comments as I can so that you can keep up with what I'm reading and you don't think I'm just crazy and talking to myself. I see Helter is here. Urban is here. Good morning from the rainy West Coast, he says. Spectre is here. Long live the USA. May we get it back and hold it as it was meant to be. Biting the back of my arm. And again, if you can't see this, I'm surrounded by kittens from our little cat shelter. And they are very mischievous today. Yeah, it'd be nice if we could get the USA back on track. Dragon is here. Boogers is here. Keisha is here. 500 Magnum. Bam says I can hear voices. Well, hopefully it's just me. And Stacy is here. Thanks for joining us today. Oh, for those of you who were asking, I know no one asked on the stream yet. Yeah, this morning was my endodontist appointment. So we are back to, yeah, the tooth can be salvaged. Great. I'm sure most of you know the story by now of what happened with my trials with dentistry thus far. PV is here. Space Maddie is here. Says howdy. Thanks for joining us today. So yeah, I went to the endodontist this morning and they examined it and said, yes, it can be repaired. It's not an root canal that a traditional dentist should do, which is why the original dentist probably stopped in the middle of it and then told me the tooth had to come out and I needed an implant, which led me to dentist number 2, who was like, no, I think that's a mistake. And most of you know the story by now, but now we're back to let's just fix the tooth again. But that means the endodontist has to do the root canal, and that is expensive. Even with the insurance, the out-of-pocket is crazy. Magnum says the scumbags in charge have put forth the BS safe storage bill again here in Georgia. The bill is HB 161. I've called and said no, and I'm going to again as well. Keep calling. And Monkey says, hello, I'll be listening this time since the doc solved my ear issue. Okay. And Space says, we all love the dentist. Indeed. I never had trouble with dentists in my adult life until recently with this. And they screwed up a lot. Again, for those of you who aren't aware of this discussion, when he changed his mind and bailed on halfway through the root canal, he overfilled it and I couldn't close my teeth together. So until I got to the second dentist, I couldn't chew solid food for more than a week. All People says hello, and they refused to file it. The second dentist fixed it for me. He didn't even charge me. He was so disgusted. 500 Magnum says saying nothing is compliance. But top of the hour, as we jump in, and this is something you've probably all seen in the news already. I'm going to throw it out there because I already see the direction it's going to go in, because you can leave no disaster unturned. Always exploit your disasters. And PV said soon everyone could have a treatment called Brix 3000 in Ganial. It messed up there. The word is hyphenated, so I'm not sure what it means. Universal injectable. It's revolutionary. So this is from The Guardian. And of course, it's talking about, let me get rid of that ad. Libya, and you probably heard this by now. Libya, 10,000 missing after unprecedented floods, said Red Cross. 10,000 people are missing after unprecedented flooding in Libya, the Red Cross has said, as the extent of the damage to Derna, the port city where two dams burst over the weekend, became more clear. Tamer Ramadan, the Libya envoy for the International Federation, of Red Cross and Red Crescent societies, gave the figure at a UN briefing in Geneva on Tuesday, describing the death toll as huge. Local media quoted Tariq al-Khazars, a spokesman for the administration that controls the east of Libya, putting the number dead at more than 5,200 people. Othman Abel Jalil, the administration's health minister, said he expected the number to double. The number of missing people is in the thousands, and the number of dead is expected to reach 10,000, he told Al Masar TV channel. Entire neighborhoods have been washed away in Derna. More than 700 bodies have piled up in the cemetery waiting to be identified. So two things are going to come out of this. One, they're going to be asking you to make charitable donations to Libya. Remember how we used to hate Libya? Just saying. We got Gaddafi killed. They're going to be looking for money, and you can't trust it, especially the Red Cross. I don't trust the Red Cross. And they're going to blame it somehow on climate change, even though it was a burst dam, right? Yeah, 2 dams burst over the weekend. That's what it says. Climate change, burst dam. I'm just waiting for them to exploit this. I'm waiting for it. Any day now. Flukeman is here, and Flukeman says, Shivanti Sathanadan, I can't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, a high LVL Democrat in Minneapolis member, said she was going to dismantle MPD back in 2020, but when she got carjacked, she said she praises the MPD, the self-entitlement. Yeah, it was great until it happened to her, right? 500 Magnum says, I don't care what I know they don't care what we think, however, refuse to be part of their commie BS. And if enough people say no, they will listen. Hopefully. And Cruising says, tuning in from the car. And there is David Creason. He says he's on lunch break. All People says, looks like the Western nation will be expected to take in more refugees. They probably crossing the Canadian border right now. Because, of course, now we see they are crossing both borders. They're coming across Canada in droves. Dragon says the rich and wealthy will choose to ignore these horrible events until it hits their front doors. Then they'll move into the bunkers that they've been investing in. Helter says, I think it's very telling that there's hardly any mention of this in the news, whereas Morocco's earthquake still makes the front page. Yet up to 10,000 people dead is normally that would throw up a flag on the news. They would love that. Cruising says the toxic masculinity Mustang is giving me ideas. Oh, from a short that I did. I saw that in a parking lot. And Ali says, anyone seeing all the military aircraft lately? I haven't seen any. We used to get a lot of drones out here, but will you stop? Okay, got a break for this. It's a kitten murdering a Care Bear. I don't know how he got it down there. I wasn't paying attention. There we go. Go on. There's your whole show right there. Forget the news. I couldn't resist. As we catch up some more of the comments here, PV says, yeah, I'm seeing the reason for the flooding is Storm Derna. And Sistad said, hello from Colorado. 500 Magnum says, look at Tennessee. They had all kinds of gun control and enough people stood up and they achieved nothing. Not a single bill passed. And Keisha said, I know someone who got an emergency blood transfusion from Red Cross and they sent him a bill. Huh. And Urban says, that better not be a limited edition Care Bear. Yeah, it is. It's like the anniversary edition. I should probably get it away from him. There you go. It's my wife's 25th anniversary edition. It doesn't look like he harmed it. Just dragged it off of the table because she had it sitting back here on her computer station. But there you go. Oh, Legends is here. And Rock Valley. Anybody know how much AMD food processing plant that went up in Decatur, Illinois does? It processes soybeans. That was a soybean processing plant. So all of the soy boys across the West Coast, their testosterone will go up a few notches over the next few weeks. All people says, "LOL, a kitten killing a Care Bear." Yeah, really. Care Bears share. Bam says, "Good that the cats have proper training." I know. You see, of course, there is Dusty on her perch as they tear around. As long as they stay away from her, because she doesn't like that. She gets annoyed with them. DIY says, "What about the hard narcotics users? Will they become like rabid dogs after SHTF and become a bigger problem?" Well, really hardcore drug users, think DTs. They will thin themselves out pretty quickly. Most of them are pretty sickly, desperate and sickly, and not in their right mind anyway. And many of them going cold turkey without anything at all. A lot of them won't survive that. They'll get sick, they'll dehydrate from vomiting and from diarrhea. And the rest of them will kill each other or get killed trying to score. Not too many of them, I think, will make it very long, quite frankly. 500 Magnum says the ATF has put more rules to screw us over as well. Yes, they have. Yes, indeed, they have. Oh, I wanted to clarify something also that came up. We were talking the other day about that teacher in California who was arrested for fornicating with 3 of her students, and they've had to pay out like what 8.6, 8.7 million dollars in settlements to parents. And I was a little confused about the age of consent in California, because when I wrote about it in college, the age of consent was something crazy like 14, but they've since changed it. So it's 18 now. However, they do still have a child marriage law. So a 15-year-old can get married in California, but age of consent is 18. It's confusing, which is probably why a lot of sex offenders in California don't get real sentences. Remember, she admitted to having sex with 3 of her students in her classroom and in her home, 14, 15, and 16-year-olds, dozens of, like, more than a dozen times each, and got 6 months in jail. Think about it. But yeah, apparently the age of consent in California is now 18, although apparently it doesn't apply in certain situations. I don't understand how that works. Bam says, depends a lot on the climate and the time of year. And then Keisha says, did you see that Putin got out the Satan II nuclear warhead to be on the ready? No, I did not hear that. I did not hear that yet. Well, we're going to jump all the way across country to New Mexico. New Mexico. Since 500 Magnum's on the subject anyways. This comes from NBC News, and it says New Mexico's governor's gun ban draws bipartisan backlash because she overstepped her boundaries, if you saw that recently. DIY says, I was thinking maybe if a drug kingpin would give them dope in order to attack preppers, etc., like a junkie army. Yeah, but he's going to run out sooner or later. His supply will be cut off if there's no communication, no vehicles running, so on and so forth. Big Shooter says, what would a man get for a sentence on that? Probably like 10 times the sentence, at least. But yeah, she got 6 months. 6 months, and she was pregnant. There's no denying it, because one of them got her pregnant. But they were age range was 14 to 16, dozens of times, including in the school. Cruising says, what is blowing my mind with female predators is just why. I always figure the male ones can't get laid, but any given woman can just wave a flag and get a line of volunteers. Yeah, it seems that way, doesn't it? Savage Lee says, if it were a man sleeping with female students, he'd never see the light of day ever again. I think that's a given. And Rock Valley says, ADM also has one of the largest corn wet mills in the world. Getting into NBC's article here, and that is her. That is New Mexico's governor. And remember, New Mexico, it was Albuquerque, right? Where James Boyd was murdered, shot to death by a SWAT team for illegal camping. They set a dog on him. They shot him with a flashbang. They shot him with beanbag. That's what kills me too. After putting like half a dozen rounds full auto from an AR-15 through his side, they're gonna shoot him with the beanbag gun while the dog rips his leg. If you haven't seen the footage, it's absolutely amazing. And then when the people in Albuquerque protested it, because this is the first thing I think of every time I hear New Mexico now, when they protested, riot police pummeled that crowd. They beat them to a pulp. So New Mexico's kind of screwed up. It says New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham is facing harsh criticism from both sides of the aisle over her recently issued order temporarily suspending certain gun rights in Albuquerque and its surrounding country, which is illegal. The Democratic governor on Friday announced a 30-day ban on the right to carry open or concealed firearms in public in an effort to curb gun violence and illegal drug use in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County. State police were tasked with enforcing the order, which carried fines for violations. The announcement prompted a string of lawsuits and ignited opposition from Democrats and Republicans alike. Because, obviously, drug addicts and criminals are going to legally open carry, right? Because that's who you're affecting with laws like this. The people who have the right, have earned the right, whatever. Bernalillo County Sheriff John Allen, a Democrat, said Monday he would not enforce the ban, which he called unconstitutional. He is correct. The order will not do anything to curb gun violence other than punish law-abiding citizens from their constitutional right to self-defense, Allen said during a news conference. He's right again. And also, if you have all this kind of violence going on with like drug addicts and drug dealers and whatever, those people need to be able to defend themselves. Because no matter how fast the police can get there, they're not there right when something is happening. You deserve the right to be able to defend yourself. It's unconstitutional, so there's no way we could enforce that order, he added. Very nice. Police data shows that through Friday, there were 76 homicide victims in Albuquerque, the state's largest city. Representative Ted Lieu, Democrat California. Why is a Democratic California chiming in on something that's happening in New Mexico? A Democratic member of Congressional Task Force on Gun Violence Prevention said that while he supported gun safety laws, the governor's order violated the Constitution. He's right, but I always wonder why they got to chime in on something that's happened in other states. You know what I mean? If you catch my point. Sistad says, New Mexico, stand and deliver your weapons. Not. And Monkey says, I always remember people saying that California is a beautiful place to visit, not a good place to stay. It also depends on where you're visiting. Remember, is it San Francisco's got the poop map? So you know where the largest concentrations of fecal matter in the streets are? Monkey says it's on the police activity channel here on YouTube, I believe. Catching up with some of the comments. Helter said the problem lies with New Mexico's legal system. Many judges release violent offenders. Too many individuals are being let go without adequate jail or prison time. All People said some of the female teacher predators may be government agents trying to normalize crimes. And Monkey said, remember the gun laws screw over the average law-abiding Joe and Jane. Criminals don't follow laws, hence the name criminal. Yeah, laws are for the law-abiding, obviously. Urban said, this reminds me of the dogfight between Alberta and the federal government. Trudeau's massive gun grab has come to a screeching halt in Alberta. Good. It needs to stop somewhere, and it needs to roll back. PV said Governor Grisham needs removing from power along with her cabinet. And Rock Valley said, when seconds count, police are only 10 minutes away. Yeah, exactly. And Monkey, yeah, okay. Monkey's just making a typographical correction. Cruising says, man, can I get hired as a government agent? It'd be nice to have the second income. No kidding. But that's it is unconstitutional. She did overstep her bounds, and she is punishing law-abiding citizens for the acts of a few, which most laws and most regulations, unfortunately, do that. They punish 100,000 people to make an example out of one individual that nobody even sees or cares about when it happens. It's not fair and it's not right, and it happens all the time. Happens all the time. And it's amazing, these people, they get into power and they think they can just do whatever the hell they want. Well, mostly they can, apparently. They come up with all these harebrained ideas, and for the most part, people go along with it. I like this one sheriff here saying that he's willing to buck the system. Hey, that's unconstitutional. I'm not going to have my deputies doing that. Good for him. And I'm surprised to see a Democratic California Democrat, I said that twice, Ted Lieu, Democrat member of Congressional Task Force on Gun Violence, saying that that's unconstitutional. Although, again, it annoys me when lawmakers from one state talk about something going on in another one. And Dragon says, make no mistake, this is a test run of what it comes to cities all over America. They're watching how the public reacts and what they'll have to deal with on a broader scale. Yeah, I can see that. 500 Magnum said, even if we're stupid enough to believe criminals follow laws, what the hell is 30 days going to do? She's testing the waters, and if she gets away with it, it will undoubtedly happen federally. Plus, too, also, they get to write tickets because they're going to issue fines, and then all those tickets are going to end up in court. Those people are going to fight it, and it's just going to tie people up in court. It's a load of crap. It's a waste of taxpayer funding. And while we're talking about a waste of funding and a waste of taxpayer dollars and a waste of time, I give you, ladies and gentlemen, the resident in chief or resident in thief, sweet old Uncle Joe. Sweet old Uncle Joe. Got to talk about him again. And this comes from Daily O. And I love the montage, the little collage, rather, they put together here for him, making him look all confused and dopey. Although it's not hard to do. He looks like Jeff Dunham's old man puppet, actually. And the puppet was around before he was president. It says, U.S. President Joe Biden's press conference in Vietnam adds fuel to the Sleepy Joe fire, because he fumbled all over himself and was really embarrassing yet again. Savage says these unconstitutional governors don't care. They break the law, wait for it to be challenged and defeated in court a year or longer later. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, 2 years later. Yeah. They were trying to set a precedence, and they're trying to test the water. Getting into the article, and again, this is from Daily O. In a press conference that unfolded against the backdrop of burgeoning global tensions and economic discussions, the U.S. president's recent appearance in Vietnam has once again thrust his, quote, Sleepy Joe image into the limelight. Critics of the president, who coined the nickname, concerned that Biden's physical and mental capabilities are waning as he navigates the challenges of his presidency. The press conference held at the culmination of President Biden's two-nation tour of India and Vietnam left many observers bewildered by a series of meandering statements and peculiar exchanges with the media. I hate it when it jumps around. These ads are annoying. As the questions flowed, a moment of levity emerged when President Biden responded to a query about his interactions with Chinese President Xi Jinping by exclaiming, I'll tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to bed. But underneath the chuckles, it left us pondering if he was serious about tackling global issues or just ready for a cat nap. I bet he really was ready to go to bed, because that sounds really crazy. Why would you say that? Then came the fossil fuels fumble. When asked about his stance on reducing carbon emissions, the 80-year-old U.S. president embarked on an adventure of verbal gymnastics, invoking an obscure John Wayne Western film that left the media scratching their heads. Quote, the Indian looks at John Wayne and points to the Union soldier and said he's lying dog-faced pony soldier. Well, there's a lot of dying dog-faced pony soldiers out there about global warming. We don't say global warming anymore. That's so Obama era. What's wrong with you? We say climate change now, buddy. What further added to the strangeness of the press conference was its abrupt conclusion. And actually, that's what this is. And I'll play this for you really quickly. And hopefully we can get the sound to work right as he...
President Joe Biden, be it politics or the octogenarian's health. In the latest incident, a shocking video shows his staff cutting him off mid-sentence at a news conference in Hanoi. The 80-year-old president was seen leaving the podium.
It wasn't confrontational at all.
Thank you, everybody. This ends the press conference. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
This incident...
That's what they were talking about, is like as he was continuing to ramble on and meander there, suddenly the announcer just says, "Oh, he's done," and tells him to get off the stage. And it's like, okay, who's really in charge? Who's really in charge here? Bam says Rubber Mask Joe. Yeah, thanks for that, Kitten. And PV says he looks like an old Max Headroom. Yeah, I remember Max Headroom. Rodney says Sleepy Creepy Joe is the epitome of what's wrong with politics in the Western world. Corrupt, creepy, and senile. And Savage says Max Headroom had a better suit. Urban says, well, I'm impressed by Joe's ability to reach deep into that old memory bank, then throw together parts of actual sentences comprised of every scripted blurb from his half century in politics. And Space says, poor fella. Keisha said, why would they expect anything other than this at this point? I don't know, but they still put him up there and they still let him ramble on like he's crazy. Monkey said, Jesus, I wonder what the other world leaders are thinking about when something like that happens. They think he's a puppet. They think that he's addle-minded. They think that our leadership is a joke. They think that there's some fourth level of government that's actually running the show. You know, not the judicial branch or the executive branch or, you know, whatever. They think there's a fourth level that's actually running things, and they probably be right. I've got to be careful there. They think he's a puppet. Think he's lost his mind. It's embarrassing. It's quite embarrassing. Even with a teleprompter, he can't stay on track. He gets cut off. He gets told what to say. He actually says at press conferences, I'm not supposed to talk to you. He's got a list of who he can call on for a question, and there's a predetermined question with specific individuals. It's ridiculous, and he can't even manage that at this point, you know. And I've speculated that it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of it was plausible deniability, but we've gone beyond that at this point with Joe Biden about whether or not it's plausible deniability and whether or not he's acting, because a lot of the high level politicians do get acting lessons and they do put on a show for you. But I think we're beyond that with Uncle Joe at this point. And Monkey says if Biden somehow runs and wins in 2024, the people that voted, assuming the votes work for sake of argument, for him are really lacking the IQ and the critical thinking skills. And Sistad says, I have a great idea. Let's impeach him. Yeah, good luck. Let's see if that does anything at all. Impeachment doesn't work. Cruising said the fourth branch, unelected lifetime serving government bureaucrats that cannot be removed from their positions that force continually between one regime and the next, so the elections barely matter. Yeah, there's something else going on behind the scenes. All of these people are bought and paid for. It's absolutely insane. And it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. I'm sure that other world leaders in other countries will look at the United States and are like, wow, what the hell happened? And yet, for some reason, they still want to come here because they're pouring over both of our borders in droves. It doesn't stop. They don't stop coming. Nothing's being done to stop them. So why shouldn't they? Why shouldn't they? And, you know, bouncing over to Kamala Harris, Kamala, whatever the hell, however she pronounces it. I don't even really get it half the time. I don't know what she's talking about. But stretching over to her, who says, yeah, I'm ready to take over for Biden if something happens, but he's fine. He's fine. Newsweek, fact check, did Kamala Harris compare 9/11 to January 6th? Because that's been an issue. What do you think they're going to say? Do you think they're going to confirm that she has compared it, or are they going to deny it? Because normally when you look at fact checking, which is why I like to take a stab at it from time to time and pull up these so-called fact checkers, is because they always try to cover it up, and the way that they cover it up doesn't connect. They play off of the words. And Savage said, Joe's just too old. I'm sorry, but he needs to retire. It's embarrassing. He needed to retire 50 years ago, because I don't think he's ever really accomplished much of anything in politics, but he's been in there for like 5 decades. It's really incredible. But again, this comes from Newsweek. Joe Biden's administration faced fresh criticism this week over the president's decision not to visit Ground Zero in commemoration of September 11th. Yeah, we talked about that yesterday. President Joe Biden was in Alaska rather than New York or any other memorial sites on Monday, as the U.S. remembered the thousands of lives lost in 2001. Biden was not the only White House member facing scrutiny either. As one conservative commentator told his YouTube viewers, the Vice President Kamala Harris has tried to equate the events of 9/11 with those on the January 6th Capitol riots. I've heard that. Here's the claim, and then here's the facts. Claim. During a YouTube video posted on September 11th, 2023, and viewed more than 130,000 times since, conservative commentator Benny Johnson claimed that Kamala Harris has compared the terrorist attacks of September 11th with the storming of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. It's the storming of the Capitol now, huh? Storming of the Capitol, we're calling it. Johnson, who was interviewing Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York City, on the day of 9/11, and former Donald Trump attorney, said, in fact, Kamala Harris just moments ago was saying that January 6th is just like September 11th. This is a day that will live in infamy, she said. The facts. Harris has previously made a comparison between the two events. Oh, they admit it. That's amazing. She must be falling from grace. She made the comment on January 6, 2022, as part of a speech addressing the one-year anniversary of the U.S. Capitol riot. Now, not an insurrection anymore. It's a riot now. And not even that. Not even that. It's a protest. A protest and illegal entry, vagrancy, anything but an insurrection. Harris began her speech by mentioning the bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001, and the Capitol riots of January 6, 2021, saying each was marked in the collective memory of the U.S. as days when our democracy came under assault. Certain dates echo throughout history, including dates that instantly remind all who have lived through them, Harris said. That's really not a good comparison. And I hate how these politicians try to tie things together like that do not match. The protest, I'm calling it a protest, on January 6th in no way compares to Pearl Harbor and the destruction and the thousands of lives involved, and no way compares to September 11th and its destruction and the thousands of lives that were involved. And to pander to a political talking point like that, to potentially the families of people who fell victim on September 11th, to try to tie those two together, is insulting. It's insulting, but that's no less than what I expect from Kamala Harris. Not only that, but I mean, she's being called out in the news too for being seen laughing and being jovial during her time there. Going on here with some of the comments, 500 Magnum said Kamala is even dumber than Joe, which is hard to believe. We might as well let Clint Eastwood's old ace in there, Savage. Okay. All People says Kamala was always the candidate that Democrats wanted in office, the perfect puppet joke. Biden was merely running as the placeholder. Dragon says the fact that she's addressing this means that they're afraid of another event that challenges their actions. 500 Magnum says term limits now. Yeah, you wish. They got to vote for it, and they're not going to. Rodney says the establishment is indeed the core of the problem. The lifetime bureaucrats are effectively the deep state. And Helter says our leaders blow things way out of what really took place. Maybe we should send her to a real war zone to show her the difference between peaceful and not. Yeah, if she was actually there. You mean like how when Hillary Clinton was in the war zone dodging bullets, and then it turned out that never happened? But that's insulting to the people that actually were there or were actually connected to something that happened during 9/11. Thousands of people were killed. And the majority of people who died as a result of January 6th are guards who committed suicide before the trial. 4 or 5 of them, correct? Which is an amazing coincidence. Are the guards and Secret Service agents and stuff that are hired to guard the White House that weak? Their wills are that weak. Is that the idea? Is that what happened? Or they're so sad over the democracy dying. Is that what happened? I'm trying to see if I can find it even, because I heard it was like 4 or 5. But before they could get to the trial, it's 4. And I'll pull that up real quick because that's on Newsweek. I just want to verify what I'm talking about. And Zane is here. Thanks for joining us today, Zane. Because I try to just like not pull stuff out of thin air. You know what I mean? So here's the article. 4 Capitol Police. Is it popped up yet? Or am I reading to myself? Hold on. It's being sluggish. Here we go. 4 Capitol Police officers died by suicide since the January 6th insurrection. They didn't die by suicide. They killed themselves. Oh, they might have died by suicide, actually, because it might have been like when Epstein committed suicide, if you catch my drift. And so was this done? Did they actually kill themselves? Were they actually that weak? Or were they disappeared so that they could not testify in court? Does anybody else think that's really suspicious? That's a Hillary Clinton job right there. Zane says the Philadelphia murderer is still at large. And Keisha made a $2 donation. Thank you, Keisha. And Babies, thank you. Say thank you. He can't talk, I know. Oh, there you go. There you go. Thank you, darling. And again, thank you, Keisha. Much appreciated. All the help I can get for taking care of our strays. Savage says they need to do cognitive tests on these politicians. Seriously. Again, that's something they'd have to vote in. We do them on my patients every 6 months at the age of 75. A few easy questions because they get upset about Eisenhower. Okay. And Savage say, J6, give me a break. Never forget. Yeah, I remember $1.99 gallon unleaded. Yeah, no kidding. That's the last time you saw that price. Cut that out. Don't do that. 500 says, how was the hurricane y'all got? I was out of power for a day, but that's all very lucky. Florida got it the worst. They always do for some reason. It didn't really bother us. We didn't really have a problem with it. At least not where I am. So we're good right now. Come on. He's under the table pulling the cables. So if you hear anything weird, that's what it is. But that's a huge coincidence to me. And that's something I would love to see properly investigated. I don't believe they actually committed suicide. Again, how weak are you? Oh, because there was a protest at the Capitol building. I can't live with myself. Our democracy is dead. Let me go and commit suicide now. It doesn't make sense. Keisha says, I got a little rain here in Georgia. Yeah, it didn't really affect us. Now, this one, here's another news story I'm going to throw out here. And I need to throw this out here. Come back. What are you doing? I need to throw this one out here because this is a news story that pops up from time to time, pisses me off every time I see it. And I'll tell you why after I read it. Kitty. And this is an article from, I believe, the Premier Daily. Premier Daily. And it says, first red heifer in 2,000 years fulfills biblical prophecy and signs end of days. Oh, there it is, the red heifer. And I'm going to be sarcastic. I'm sorry. And I'll tell you why in a minute. And in fact, I did a whole video on this some months ago on Prepper University. Reading the article, when it comes to biblical prophecy and the anticipation of the end of days, few phenomena have captured the imagination of believers in Christianity and Judaism as profoundly as the concept of the red heifer. The birth of a red heifer is not merely a biological occurrence. It is laden with theological and eschatological significance. The article delves into the intriguing story of the first red heifer in 2,000 years, examining its historical roots, the prophecies it fulfills, and the fervent anticipation it stirs among the faithful. And they go on to explain why it's important, for the red heifer, biblically speaking. Now, here's the problem. First red heifer in 2,000 years, they produce them by the bushelful. Every few months, there's another red heifer, okay? It's not that rare, number one. Number two, there's no temple for it to be sacrificed in. And number three, the red heifer is only viable for a year. And then it's too old to be sacrificed. If you go to Israel, I think they probably got 24 of them on display now because they'll buy them and they'll bring them up there for the tourists. They've got viable red heifers. They pop up all the time, every few months, for years. I've seen stories like this, but they'll still sit there and tell you, oh, the first red heifer in 2,000 years, my ass. And again, with no temple, it's useless. And after a year, it's useless. Give me a damn break. And I just, you got to understand, look up red heifer in the news and all the way up until, because usually the internet will cut off at about 12 years. You can find dozens of stories. Zane says it's 90 seconds to midnight. And Booger says, wait, don't tell me someone pulled the South Park prank like Carmen did. No, I don't think so. Zane says red heifers are common in my area. And Helter says the red heifer is just another shiny object to distract the sheeple. It's a shame that most people who claim to be Christian have never read the Bible, let alone studied them. Yeah, like I said, they're not, I mean, they're rare per se, but they're not that uncommon. A perfect one, that is, it doesn't have, it meets the qualifications when they do the hair count for it being primarily red. Keisha says, LOL, you are outraged. I'm just outraged by the ignorance of it, but the fact that people believe this and they'll ride that horse or that cow, as the case may be. And, oh God, it's the end of days. Here we go. And then they'll start making YouTube videos talking about doomsday and it'll get like 5 million views. 500 Magnum said, someone in the news said, I can't remember who, that 90% of the population would be dead in 6 months and a grid down. I unfortunately can't argue with the most people are completely defenseless. Yeah. Watch, what is the movie? Blackout USA from National Geographic. I think it's a Blackout USA, and they have another one, Blackout UK, Blackout United Kingdom. And it's like a docudrama, and it's an EMP. An EMP causes the power to go out for like a week, and it's total chaos. Probably like 20% of the population dies in the docudrama. People are just stupid. My favorite is the guy who accidentally killed himself opening a can of peaches. For the to make the point. If you haven't seen it, spoiler alert. All he gets away with from FEMA is this big can of peaches, and he can't open it after he fought somebody nearly to death for the damn thing. And so he's trying to stab it, and you can't just stab like that. It doesn't work. The knife slipped right through his hand, slashed open his palm, couldn't stop the bleeding. He bled to death. But that looks to me like the kind of stupid, the kind of stupid thing some goofball who doesn't know what he's doing would do. You know what I mean? Anyways, Whisper says the one for UKN got into more detail. Oh, the UK version, and they stole his generator. That guy. Savage says there are some dairy cows out here in Oklahoma. They are more akin to pets, as beef steer outnumber people 4-1 at least. And Monkey said, speaking of religion, the Torah class channel I saw is very interesting. My question is, who should I learn about first? I'm in it for the curiosity of how those people came about. I would always advocate starting at the beginning, because he does start with Genesis. If you want something that's more akin to just answering specific questions rather than study breakdowns, 119 Ministries on YouTube is also pretty good. They don't break it down the way they do on Torah class, but they do. What is wrong with you? They do answer specific biblical questions, and they put a lot of detail into it. And Savage says a beautiful kitty. Yeah, they all are. They're a bunch of sweethearts. He's just really playful right now, so he's in my way. Whisper says both are available to watch on Venmo. Thank you for that, or Vimeo, Venmo, whatever it is. 500 Magnum says they have not a single firearm and need even a week's worth of groceries. That's just insane. And Zane says, I predict that EMP will drop before the nukes drop to increase casualties. And Savage says, hey, he could have YouTubed how to open a can without a can opener. Prepper University could have saved his life. Well, the grid was down. There was no electricity. So no, he couldn't YouTube anything. And he stabbed the can and he sliced his hand open and bled to death with a T-shirt wrapped around his palm. Urban says, I recall a survival expert saying that if one is in the middle of a city, it's best to stock food that doesn't require cooking because starving people from blocks away would smell it and come to take. Yeah, until they thin themselves out. And Whisper says they couldn't. The couple that did it, they were not exactly prepper minded. As we continue on. What are you doing? Yeah, he is just all in it today. Okay. Whisper says his wife or girlfriend was a whack job, though. Yeah, and the kid told on him. Oh, my dad's got a generator, and it's like, yeah. Next day the generator's gone. They teach your kid to shut up. That's what you need to do. And 500 Magnum said, I don't understand this victim mindset people have. Oh, they want someone else to take responsibility for the foolish things they've done. They want an easy way out. They want someone else to fix their problems. They don't want to admit they were wrong. You could go on and on. It takes a certain mindset to sit there and say, yeah, you know what? I screwed that up. Or, yeah, that was my mistake. Things like that. It takes a stronger constitution for a person to own it. Savage says, pretty kitty playtime. Yeah, no kidding. And Alexander said, my mom's cat is like that. Yeah, he's real rambunctious today. This one comes from Fox News. It says, Massachusetts mayor calls to change state's right to shelter law amid migrant crisis. They don't have an endless capacity. I thought this was really funny, actually. Serves them right. Massachusetts towns, and I'm from Massachusetts, and it's changed. It was bad enough when I was there, but now it's a mess. Massachusetts towns are facing a reality check, straining to provide for crowds of migrants seeking shelter in the state, according to the New York Times. Look at these people. A report from the Times Sunday detailed how the small town of Woburn, Massachusetts, and other areas in the state have been struggling to meet the demand of the migrant crisis amid the state's right to shelter law. There is a law there. How does it go? If you have children, you can't be homeless. They'll put you someplace. Continuing to the article characterized the locals' plight, stating, barely 2 weeks have passed since the migrant crisis arrived in their city of 40,000 people 10 miles northwest of Boston, but the volunteers gathered at a church in Woburn on a recent evening sounded battle weary. Okay. It continued, the small group of locals has stepped up to help some 80 migrant families whom the state placed in Woburn hotels last month, at the taxpayer expense, determined to offer a warm welcome. The volunteers had quickly discovered the daunting complexity of meeting basic needs, a reality check also underway elsewhere in the state and nation. So they were all for it until they started having to pay for it. The Times noted the Massachusetts' unique right to shelter law has only compounded the problem, stating, in Massachusetts, the only state with a right to shelter law that guarantees every family with children a place to stay, the crisis has been accelerating with more than 80 cities and towns receiving migrants to date. Woburn Mayor Scott Galvin, a Democrat, is sounding the alarm about the law. According to the Times, he said the situation was not sustainable and called for state legislators to consider changing the 40-year-old right to shelter law, which he said was passed at a different time and was not meant to cover what we're seeing now. I think that's really interesting, and I'll tell you why here in a moment as I catch up some of these comment. Zane says people don't want to fight their own battles. And Whisper says in the UK version, you had the two guys that set everything on fire trying to get gas. And Zane said the major reason cops exist. And Spectre says, I've been telling people about this thing going on right now before YouTube, before the internet, back in the mid-'80s, and very few listened. No, they don't listen until they're up to their eyeballs in it. Oh, give me a break, kitty. Whispers says, oh, he's talking to Spectre, sorry. 500 Magnum says that had to be quite the change coming from Massachusetts to Georgia. I bet you felt out of place. Well, I've been bouncing around a lot. I've lived in several different states. But anything was better than Massachusetts. It's so freaking crowded. Urban says, Canadian friends often express frustration that the U.S. wants to limit the influx of migrants. When I mentioned that many of the same migrants will be illegally crossing into Canada, they just blank. Yeah. Dragon says, Democrats shoot themselves in the foot and they complain about the pain. This is comically rich. And Whisper says, sometimes they don't even listen. Or what is that what that said? Sometimes they don't listen even then. Okay. I read it incorrectly. I think it's hilarious because they did that law way back in the day so they could pat themselves on the back and say, look, see, we're not going to let children be homeless. We're going to guarantee them placement, even though the law doesn't freaking work. And now that they're overloaded in their sanctuary situation, letting all these migrants in and can't put them anywhere and are paying a fortune in taxpayer money to keep them in hotels and so on. Now, because they realize it's such a problem, they want to undo the law so they don't have to be responsible for it. That's how you handle it. Oh, we don't like this. Let's change the law back. Unbelievable. The hypocrisy of that. Savage says, my wife is from Massachusetts. She left Fall River, Mass in 95 to the Oklahoma Territory when she seen advertisements for the strip club at her daughter's elementary school. Time to get out. Wow. And Helter says, Massachusetts governor lives in a spacious house with plenty of room to accommodate some illegal immigrant families. Why not send them to the governor's house? Oh, you know that ain't going to happen. That's for you. You're the one that's supposed to be accommodating. You're the one that's supposed to be helping, even though your tax dollars already are. Whispers says, look at what Illinois is planning with the homeless. Says there will be no homeless by 2030. I think Prickster said. Well, they're putting them in circus tents. they're setting up these massive tents. They've got them all. Well, not the homeless, but the homeless are at the airport, and now the migrants are at the airport, and the migrants are sleeping in the police station too. And they're gonna get parking lots and put up big circus tents and house them in there for the winter. That's gonna go over great. Urban says sent them to Oprah's newly purchased tract of land in Maui. Yeah, that's good. Nice and warm, plenty of sea air. PV says they're not migrants. It's all facilitated invasion. We in the West are too weak to stop them. Take a look at what Hungary did. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Interesting point on that one. But I just think it's funny how Massachusetts takes that attitude. And yeah, we got way too many people coming in from too many different countries. It's not just South America. They're crossing the southern border out of control. There's nothing stopping them. They're crossing the northern border. They're coming in from Canada. I read an article about that last week. And something like, 91,000 people caught last month crossing from the northern border. People from South America, people from Africa, people from Asia, people from the Middle East. Where the hell are they coming from? People from Eastern Europe. All kinds of different languages, all kinds of different people. And where did they get the funding? Think about that. Where'd they get all the money for because you had to buy plane tickets and schedule to end up in Canada or South America to make the trek here. That had to be funded. If they had that kind of funding, they could have stayed where the hell they came from, unless somebody gave it to them. Just saying. Zane says homelessness is impossible. And Whispers says he said zero homeless over the state. Yeah, sure. What are you going to do? Bury him somewhere? Or put him on a bus to some other state? Yeah, that's what they did in Georgia years ago. When they cleared out a lot of homeless and cleared out a lot of tenements, they gave a whole lot of people a $50 bill and a bus ticket. Sent them all over the place. That was like, back in the 90s? Savage says, I don't think they're about placing migrants from very warm equatorial regions and dumping them off in Chicago, New York for the winter, or do they? Yeah, maybe they'll freeze. They're not ready for that. They're not ready for a real winter at all. But we'll have to see how that goes. Zane said, who was the whistleblower who exposed Oprah? Oh God, who was it? It was actually the Architectural Digest had that article about Oprah Winfrey buying up almost 900 acres a few months before the fire. That's where I read the article from, was from the Architectural Digest. Of all people, they're the ones talking about it. But yeah, must be nice. Must be nice. But no, I lived in obviously Massachusetts, Kansas, South Carolina, and Georgia. So yeah, a few different places. But as far as Massachusetts, I mean, I don't think I would want to live there long term again, especially the way that the laws have gotten so much worse. It's taxes are much worse. It's more crowded now. You know, I've done better in other states. So there you go. What is this? Monkey says, about an hour ago, the UN called the U.S.-Mexican border the world's deadliest land route. Oh, I guess they want more money to make it safer. Is that what they're shooting for? Oh, maybe we should deploy National Guard all along the caravan, all the way down to Peru or Ecuador or wherever, to offer them protection and supplies. How about that? Eric Peter is here. He says, my wife is from Portland. Took several years for her to get papers to come here before we met. It also cost her a fortune, which she paid. Yeah. And you're talking about her coming from another country. If you earned it, I got no problem. If you snuck in and we're paying for it, I got a problem. Zane says, when SHTF happens, Hawaii will become a battleground. Hawaii is a disaster outside of tourist areas. And All People says, if these invaders spent even a fraction of the time, money, and effort they spent trying to break into the break into the East and used it instead to build up their own nations, they'd be rich by now. And he posted that twice. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and start to wrap up for the day. Again, this is Coffee Talk Live, or at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube if you're listening and not watching. Also mirroring on Prepper University. And you can find me on fistfulofradio.com, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 and Friday at noon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. Thanks again, Keisha, for making a donation for the Cat Fund. Very much appreciated. I hope that everybody got something out of the conversation today. And we will do this again tomorrow.